Welcome back to Irreverent Business Podcast, the podcast where we talk about business and we do so a little bit irreverently, which just means to not take seriously things that are normally taken serious. And I have with me today Seth W. Jones, or as he's known, the ADHD guy.
Yeah.
Really just
That's pretty much
it, yeah. ADHD Coach Seth is his website, and
right.
this is a hot topic, Seth. I'm really glad you're here, man. You were a hot commodity at Oregon Business Conference.
Yeah, ADHD has become trendy.
We're going to talk a lot about that.
Yeah,
I have problems with this.
Yeah. Makes
Both
sense.
probably in focus and in the fact that it's trendy. But on Irreverent Business, you have to give me your Irreverent Business hot take, and I have to 100% agree with it or 100% disagree with it. And I'm going to make you defend your statement. There's no half-assing here. We only whole-ass things, so it's just, you're going to go for it.
All
Seth, what is your Irreverent Business hot take?
That ADHD and type 1 diabetes are like very similar.
What? I did not see that coming. I have to disagree with you because those are two radically different things in my head.
Yeah.
Where in the world are you coming up with this idea?
Well, with ADHD, it's all about self-regulation. And like a self-driving car is not a good analogy these days because that's kind of a loaded
Yeah,
loaded
the occasion
thing.
you run into people.
But like if you think about like your pancreas, we could think about your pancreas
Think about
specifically.
it all the time. Yeah.
You don't think about it because it works, right?
Right.
It regulates your blood sugar. You don't have to think about it. If you have type 1 diabetes, you have to think about it a lot because it doesn't automatically work. It doesn't self-regulate. So you have to then regulate it with insulin, with all kinds of things that I don't know a ton about type 1 diabetes, other than no one doubts that you have type 1 diabetes if you have type 1 diabetes. You could take medication for it, and no one's like,
I don't know about this guy.
I don't know
he
about
might be
that.
sliding this one under the counter.
And And so with ADHD, it's all about self-regulation. So it's our ability to self-regulate our thoughts, emotions, and behavior. So those things happen automatically within someone's mind, within our executive functioning system, and you don't have to think about it. But if you have ADHD, you struggle to regulate those things. Just like someone with diabetes struggles to have their pancreas regulate their blood sugar.
Okay.
But no one ever says, like, aren't we all a little bit diabetic? At least I haven't heard anybody say that.
I've never heard anyone say this. Yeah.
Right. But I have heard it with ADHD, right? Like, don't we all have ADHD? And like, we all have executive functioning, right? But for most people, it runs automatically.
Okay, so talk to me about executive function because this was when you and I met, probably a year ago.
Could have been.
You were the first person that I heard really talk about executive function because you were presenting at a seminar that I was at.
Right.
And talk to me about executive function. I don't know that that's a term that people are super familiar with.
Right, because people don't know what ADHD is. And not just like
Also
regular
true.
people, but like people in professions that should be very aware of it.
Yeah.
It's just not prioritized. So executive functioning, everybody has it, right? It's how our brain regulates itself. It's how we get things done. It's how we accomplish goals. The main parts that are involved that I highlight for people with executive dysfunctioning problems, it really is, there's inhibition, which is our ability to pause a thought or to pause an emotion or to pause before like doing a behavior. It's almost that like there's the stimulus and there's the response. And it's that ability to break or to pause that people with ADHD really struggle to self-regulate. It doesn't happen automatically for us. The next big part is working memory. And there's a whole lot to working memory, but essentially there's two big parts. There's one is that like I have sort of limited capacity, like not quite enough RAM in my mind. So that's why I asked you for a piece of paper and a pen, because I can store like two things in my mind. And after that, like it all falls down. Like I can juggle a few different balls, but if I try to juggle 5, they all drop. The other crazy part of working memory is most people are able to toggle between the past and the future within milliseconds. So like you're in a novel situation you haven't been in before, and you're like, oh, I need to respond. then you're able to, in your mind, go back and think about like what other people have done in that situation, what you've done in that situation. Then you're able to go forward and run some simulations. Like I could do this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. And then you make a choice and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. People with ADHD in that situation, all we have is what's in our head right now. So it's usually not enough to adequately like solve the situation. So we're anxious because it's almost like we're stuck in present mode, but not necessarily like mindful present mode. It's just we're stuck in our immediate, like what's happening right now. And the joke is, or they talk about there's the now and the not now. So people with ADHD, it's either happening now and it's real, or it's not now, it's some other time way off in the distance.
Yeah.
So that's important. And then the last one that is emotional regulation. So it's our ability to regulate our emotions. Emotions really drive the bus. So, and all of them kind of play off of one another. So if I'm feeling heightened or triggered emotionally, and I don't have the ability to self-regulate that emotion, it's going to come out in some ugly way. I'm going to get embarrassed. I feel bad about it. And I'm going to learn to slowly, gradually, like get control of this. But after a whole bunch of damage is done. So that's where there's like a psychological impact of growing up with ADHD. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So it happens always with us, right? It's just, it comes out because we don't really need those executive functions until, elementary school. And that's when we really start to have these demands that we need to keep up with. But everybody has executive functioning. It's just, you don't really think about it unless you don't sleep more than 2 hours, a couple nights in a row. No matter who you are, then you're going to have ADHD type symptoms. You're going to forget where your keys are. You're going to walk into a room and like, why am I here? Anyway, those are like the ADHD.
Jeez
experience.
Louise. Okay.
So
I have a million questions, but I want to go back to something you said originally. You're like, yeah, ADHD is trendy.
Yeah.
And if you'd led with that as your reference business hot take, I'd have been like 100% agree.
Right.
Now let's talk about, first of all, why anyone should even listen to you.
Yeah. Let's
start with that because you have there's obviously a lot of knowledge here, but give me a little bit of your background that led you into ADHD coaching.
Yeah. So clearly I've always had ADHD but I was almost, there's like a closeted analogy, right? Like where like I desperately tried to keep this from anyone and everyone. And I had like a realization sometime in elementary school or maybe even earlier that there was something off or something not quite right about how my brain worked. And so it's just a lot of like coping mechanisms. And so, anyway, I went on and I ended up working at like education. So I was a teacher for 7 years and I ended up working in school administration for a long time. So I was a middle school assistant principal for 6 years. And then I was an elementary school principal for 8 years. And
so you're not someone that just watched a lot of YouTube videos about ADHD.
No, but I have.
You have like actual degrees in education and classroom management and administration.
Yeah, I have a master's degree as a learning and behavior specialist. And
I think that's where obviously this was a leading line of questioning because I think that's really important is how many people are like, oh, I have ADHD. And I remember I've been in a couple seminars you've done, and one of them is like someone hops up with a microphone and was like, well, here I go, trying to remember what my question is. And it just felt so, I don't know, it felt kind of gimmicky to where it's like they were like all proud of the fact they had ADHD.
Right.
And if I remember right, you said something at that seminar that blew me away, and you'll have to remind me what the number is, but the percentage of people that actually have diagnosable?
6%.
See that?
It doesn't seem right.
That's lower than what I even remember you saying.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that because it seems like everybody and their dog has ADHD in 2026.
Yeah, well, it's these executive functions, right? So it's about 6% of the population has ADHD, but about 25% of the population struggles with executive functioning.
Okay.
So we could go back to my terrible diabetes analogy and talk about...
I appreciate it more now that you've explained it.
Good. Yeah. Well, and talk about like type 2 diabetes, which is environmental, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's something that is done to us or by us or whatever. The same is true for like this executive dysfunction. So with the phones, with lack of sleep, with just chaos in our minds, with not having like tranquility in our minds and trying to keep up and worry about all these things, we sort of give ourselves executive dysfunction.
What's interesting is my wife the other day, who definitively does not have ADHD.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm, who knows? I probably walk a thin line somewhere. According to my staff, they would be like, dude, you have it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you're not a doctor. We get back and forth. But she comes upstairs the other day and she goes, you know what? Everybody our age feels like we have ADHD. And I was like, tell me more.
Right.
And she goes, because we have so much going on.
We do.
And she goes, I just went downstairs, couldn't remember why I was there.
Right.
And she's like, I know there was laundry involved. I know there was something with the kids' backpacks, but she was like, we have so much going on. She's like, I feel like I have it today.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's super interesting, because it does. It's like, it's almost a joke, right? As people are like, oh, it's my ADHD. Do you find it being just an excuse for people that are undisciplined? Like, where are the lines here of it's like, no, I'm just an undisciplined person. That's why I don't have my stuff organized, versus like situational versus like you said, 6% diagnosable.
Yeah.
How do we
like a clinical level. Like, do you struggle to function, right? Like, so the analogy I've been using is it relates to working memory, and Dr. Russell Barkley is his theory on executive functioning is sort of what I've built everything that I have on, because it's really good. There's a lot of great researchers, but his stuff to me is very clear. But it's like most people, say 90% or 94% of people, or go with most people. Most people have an internal flashlight, and they're able to click on the flashlight and they're able to look off into the distance and light up their goal. And then that stays lit so they can continue to see it as they work towards achieving the goal. People with ADHD have more of a lantern, like an internal lantern that lights up, say, a 7-foot circle around me. And it's brighter than it is for the typical person in the now. But the light does not extend far enough to be able to see the goal in the distance while we work towards it. So I'll start working towards something, but I can't hold it in my mind. And it's not an issue of intelligence, right? Or all of these other things. I struggle to do it. So when I struggle to get started on something that I know I'm capable of doing, it's not a good feeling, right? And that's why half of adults between 18 and 35 with ADHD have experienced some type of substance, either abuse or like overuse during that time span. Because and I stopped drinking like over 10 years ago, because that's what I used to cope. So I got through college. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 23, my first year teaching. So I got through college by drinking, smoking weed, and lots of cigarettes. And that was like, you get enough kind of dopamine from those things in order to get, the papers weren't good, right? But so I didn't learn nearly as much as I probably could have, but I got through. But then once I was diagnosed and I had access to stimulant medication, then all of a sudden I could do these things that I couldn't do before. And that allowed me to have success in my career. But I didn't understand everything that was going on beneath the surface until I eventually burned out of my job. So we tend to run on, when you don't have a strong flashlight, there's a lot of urgency that we tend to use. And that's really what extends the light from our lantern, because I can't see the thing off in the distance until it comes into the light that I can see when it becomes urgent. And a lot of the work I do with my clients is we play with this. So instead of like shaming people for not starting on time, it's like, okay, so if you have all of this stuff to do and you have this big project, let's make sure you have everything ready to go to get started on it. And then you're going to wait and put it on your calendar and reserve all of Thursday evening so you can scramble to get things done, because that's working with your brain instead of against it. Okay. That's not the traditional way that people are taught to do this.
That's what I was going to say. Is this seems, again, I go back to, and it was a loaded question where it's like, are people just undisciplined? But it does seem like there are a lot of people out there that they like to use ADHD as an excuse for not accomplishing something they said they were going to accomplish.
Yeah, I think.
And there's other times to where, and again, like that's a judgment from someone from the outside looking in. Right. So to be very clear, acknowledging that. But I do hear it more and more and more in the entrepreneurial space, in education space, in parenting, in sports even, of people being like, dude, I just couldn't study the playbook.
Right.
And it's like, okay, where's the line between diagnosable, I need medication, or I need some sort of training? I want to talk about meds later,
Yeah.
because I had a conversation yesterday with someone who found out you're going to be on the podcast and had a question.
Yeah.
But then again, it's the like, oh my gosh, that's just me being ADHD. And it's like, well, that doesn't work sometimes. In for example, I own a company.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me and said, I was going to get this done, I didn't get it done, it's just my ADHD. It still didn't get done, Seth.
I don't
There's
think
still a ramification there.
I don't think I've ever said to anyone I didn't get it done because of my ADHD. Maybe my wife. But like, but even that, so like in romantic,
But she's not here, so we're not going to verify that.
right. But I think people do the best they can with the tools that they have, right?
Yeah.
So people don't want to disappoint their coach. People don't want to disappoint their teacher, typically, right? And so I think I look at it from that perspective and try not to get into the judgment of, but it's hard, right? And there's natural consequences for things. But yeah, what works. So like there's the urgency piece, but like say like you have an employee and there's a big project they're working on, rather than having them like independently work on it for a couple weeks and just assuming they're going to get it done, when they advocate, that's what I encourage people to do, say, hey, I know we've got this big project on Tuesday. Can I get 15 minutes with you and show you the slides that I have so far? And then Monday night, like assuming you agree to that, then Monday night, I would scramble to get all of those slides done because I know I'm going to meet with you tomorrow. And that's the urgency that I needed. It's just,
so that's working with the brain rather than
working with it. Right. Yeah. And rather than, because we're also like people with ADHD can get like 2 weeks worth of work done in like 2 hours once the urgency hits. So it's really just, but it's understanding that people are not, no one doesn't want to get the work done.
Right.
They're typically, if they really have ADHD, they're beating themselves up and wearing themselves out. So, and structure is a big piece too. So if I have all day and I don't have anything to do that day, the chances of me going for a run are super slim. But if I have 2 clients and a 90-minute window, I'm going for a run because I only have like a short amount of time and I can actually hold that time in my head.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it's all day, that's too big and I can't quite do it.
Yeah.
So having some type of structure, having some type of relationship-based thing, because people with ADHD show up more for other people than themselves. So if they know that someone is waiting for them, chances are good that they'll motivate to go. But if it's just for them, the chances of them doing it they go way down. And this is how you kind of tease out like who really has ADHD from those who struggle with executive functioning because of the society we live in, because of sleeping habits. I mean, sleep is huge when it comes to any executive function. Yeah.
Is ADHD, is it a spectrum? Is it similar to autism in that way?
Yeah, they share the Venn diagram is like almost 50% of traits are similar between ASD and ADHD. So yeah, it's definitely a spectrum.
I've seen that especially in students, like I would say middle school and under, that are diagnosed with autism.
Yeah.
That they're like, it's autism and ADHD go.
Well, it's executive. So like working memory, so dyslexia is a working memory issue because there's not the room to connect the sound, like the letters and the sounds and the meaning. So yeah, it's all intertwined. And then there's like trauma also creates difficulties with executive functioning. And there's so much of that happening. So
is that part of the struggle here, is that it is like, I mean, me asking you in 45 minutes to talk about ADHD is feels like me being like, Seth, could you give me like a history of world religion? It seems like there's just so many moving pieces.
There is.
What's one of the biggest misunderstandings about ADHD?
I think so we have these structures. So like school. So I worked in schools for almost 25 years and I left and it felt like I was pounding my head against the wall for a lot of it because it was always the same kids that were having trouble. It was always the same kids getting in trouble. But it's like with alcoholism. Like we tend to like look at it as like, oh, it's alcoholism, like its own thing. No, it's not. It's some other, right? There's some other thing that's contributing to what's happening. So I think it's understanding that this lantern and flashlight analogy, that really it's the ability to hold something in mind while working towards it, which we really struggle with. In order to extend the lantern light, it's other people. So even someone that's around me that like gives me a reminder, a shoulder tap or something saying, oh yeah, you're headed in the right direction, that can be reassuring and help like move through it. But I don't think schools could have to go so in depth on this, because that would mean changing the whole structure. Like schools are not created for people with ADHD.
Well, that was something I remember the first time I went to my doctor and said, hey, I'm starting to wonder if I have ADHD. And the first question that she asked was, how'd you do in school? And I said, very well. She goes, what do you mean? And I said, I graduated high school valedictorian. Right. And she goes, you don't have ADHD. And anytime I've said that to somebody outside of that conversation, they're like, that's not necessarily the indicator.
Yeah. And I am not like a clinical psychologist. I'm a teacher, right? So what I really do is I help people understand. It's like the psychoeducation part of understanding executive functioning and understanding like what's happening within your mind, and then learning to like, it's almost like, so our brains don't do this in a self-regulated way. So we don't have an automatic transmission. So we have to learn to drive a manual transmission, and everyone is different. So some people's transmissions might be from 2008. Some might be from 1942. So, you know, it's a lot harder
different stimuli and different environments.
And there's different presentations, right? Like, so mine is more inattentive. So most of the people that tend to gravitate towards me as clients tend to have a similar presentation, because I think it's obvious through my website and our conversations. There's other types that are, the brain moves really, really fast, right? And that's more of like the superpower ADHD thing, where people can be incredibly productive, right? But yeah, it's really like the impact. So if you're able to, so you have like looking around all of these things, I was amazed that you have all this organization. So you're really able, if you lock in on a goal, you can see the goal while you're working towards it.
I've also wound mic cords my entire life. So
yeah.
It's very soothing.
You guys can't see it, but the cords are,
they're very organized. I am proud of this. Don't look at anything else in my home office or my garage.
Yeah. But I think if I was like, if someone were to ask me, though, this is not my role, right? I don't diagnose people, but for me is if you struggle to really hold something in mind while you work towards it, like, and then you have all of the anxiety and all of the, because they're really smart people. Like I work with attorneys, I work with all kinds of like people with big jobs where the deadlines are really important, and just having somebody else to process with. So like, we don't have a lot of space in our heads. So we tend to be verbal processors. So when I'm talking, I'm actually thinking because I can't do it within my head. So I need the space. So someone just like, as I'm there and I listen to people like say all the stuff they have to do, then I ask them some questions, and then they can easily put it on a checklist. But the number one intervention is a checklist. So it's the stuff that most people do automatically is hard for us.
That was going to be my next question, is like, for people, whether you have it or don't have it. If you're dealing with executive function issues, give me kind of 5 things that you're like, man, this would be really helpful. So number 1 is checklist, write it down. If you need to get something done, write down the bullet points. Is it the tasks within the big task? Is it like, if I need to clean out my garage, do I need to not write down clean out my garage? I need to write down like organize the tools, remove the excess garbage.
I mean, it depends on your level of ADHD, right? And I think that would go back to you and thinking about like your level of executive dysfunction. So for me, like I get lost on where to start. And so like within the lantern light that I have, it's not like I'm in the present moment, but it's not always like like present moment, right? It's the lantern is swinging all over the place, right? So then this thing shines, that gets my attention. I'm like, what's that book on clockwork? And then over here, it's like, ooh, that's a nice vacation scene. And then what am I doing? Oh, right, I'm working on the garage. So like, I think the most important thing is this human connection. And so like my wife is super important to me for lots of reasons, right? But she really helps as far as like having some accountability, like within the home. It just provides some structure. When I was single, I've been divorced a couple of times, and ADHD is not a small part of that. So we tend to learn by making mistakes. But just knowing that somebody else is going to look at it. And I have some coaching friends, and if I get stuck in the garage, I've done this where a coach I know named Leslie has like, she's helped me, and then she's like, okay, send me a picture of it when it's done. And that alone is like,
Nice.
oh, now I'm going to do it. And I spent like 2 hours and I took the picture and I sent it to her, and it's ridiculous, but that's what I needed to get it done. So it's really like prioritization can be really difficult, like figuring out like what to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth. And it sounds silly, but it's real. And then
that
like,
makes sense though. Okay, so the checklist, I love the picture idea. I can think
it's
about
accountability.
that. Yeah,
right?
it is accountability. What's some other one? You mentioned sleep.
Sleep is huge.
Is sleep, does that have to do with amount of sleep, quality of sleep, just keeping and maintaining a good schedule of sleep? Like, I'm going to be in bed by, like, what is there any hack to that?
I don't know. I'm anti-hack because I just don't.
That makes sense.
I don't think they work. It's just getting enough, whatever it is, the amount that you need. If I don't get 7 hours of sleep, the next day I have to really adjust the expectations. And that's sort of what I've learned. So I'll have to like, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do a little bit of this. I'll do a little bit of that. And then sleep has to be my number one focus for the night. It's almost like I'm a very sensitive creature. And I didn't realize this early on, but like sleep is incredibly important just to kind of reset and help me focus. It's like charging the lantern, right? So if I don't charge the lantern and my light is already a little bit like it doesn't extend far enough, when I don't get enough sleep, then that makes it even worse. And then we tend to use caffeine or other substances to try and compensate, which just throws havoc into the whole thing.
I did not have my third espresso this afternoon. Starting to feel it.
Yeah, no judgment.
Well, and I want to get back to even like the statement I said, which was obviously pretty hyperbolic of people, making excuses. I don't know that people are necessarily like, I failed at my job, it's my ADHD's fault. I don't think that's what they're saying to their boss. But again, I have heard this kind of stuff where it's kind of like haphazard or a little bit just like lighthearted, like, oh my gosh, my ADHD is just making me hard to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting because we get back to the trendiness thing as well. I'm seeing it with parents self-diagnosing their kids. If their kid is difficult, they're like, oh, they probably have ADHD. Yes. And they don't look in the mirror to go like, am I contributing in any way with my parenting skills? Every parent that I've ever known is their first time on planet Earth. So I don't know any of them that had parenting figured out.
No.
But it does seem like that's also a trend, is a parent is like, my kid's struggling in school, my kid's struggling with this, it's probably ADHD. What can you tell parents that's something to look out for, or even like just some way to help, even if your kid isn't getting diagnosed, but you can tell that they're struggling with focus or executive function?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is like, there's a lot of research on physical touch.
Yeah.
So just like the reassurance that like, even if you screwed up, you're still loved, you're still okay, because there's some heaviness to it when it's really there. Like you really can't, it's almost like a vision thing. So if you really can't see the steps and you really can't hold it in mind while you start, everything is going to be hard. Baseball is going to be hard. Like all of the recreational stuff is still going to be difficult because you're struggling to regulate your thoughts, emotions, and behavior, right? Like it's just a lot of extra stuff happening.
I think it's a beautiful answer to that question.
But it's still complicated, right? Because there's kids that have, like, there's a lot of hyperactivity. There's a lot of other things tied to so many things. But there are clinicians, right, that there's a process they go through. There's rating scales, and then they don't just dole out pills because the parent says I want them diagnosed, right? And I don't have to make those decisions, and I'm thankful for that, because that's not like my work. What I've always done the best at is like working like one-on-one with people, where like it's in the moment and it's in the now. I was drawn to special education because there's chaos, and my brain loves chaos because then everybody's working at my speed, right? Because it's all in the now.
Yeah.
But when it came to like long-term planning, budgeting, yuck, right? Like, cause it just doesn't. So I would have to really like have other people there with me for support. And I really think that's what kids need, is they need a lot of support. So the lantern needs a little extra light to see it. So it does mean that they need more support, more immediate feedback to kind of reassure that they're on their way. And life is a struggle, right? No one says that life is easy, and that like there's good stuff that comes from pain, right? Like a lot of the coolest people I know have struggled, right? Like,
For
and
sure.
I don't know what it is, but it's something about that struggle that helps us either be empathetic to other people or these other traits. And that's where I still get a little triggered with the superpower thing, because if you're being diagnosed for ADHD, it means you are really struggling in your life in order to accomplish these goals. And then to get back to the diabetes thing, I've never heard anybody say like they were diagnosed with type.
Diabetes is a superpower.
No, it is, man. And you just need to like
That is
manifest.
really interesting, because you do hear this a ton where people are like, I got ADHD, it's my superpower. I can go 100 miles an hour until I can't. And I'm like, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Well,
like that sounds like a tough way to do life, of like, I'm gonna go until I have nothing else to give, and then I have to recharge for some amount of time. And
yeah.
again, everyone's different, and everybody's journey is different. But
and the presentations of ADHD are different, right? I find people like, I know lots of people with ADHD, and we all don't have like a similar presentation,
right?
But it's really like, if you're able to accomplish your goals without having to like use substances or like do something else. Like I talk about momentum with the people I work with a lot. So it's like, I have to build up the momentum before doing a difficult task. So usually in the morning, I start by unloading a couple dishes. I do that, take a breath, and then like have some water, and then I'll do some more dishes, and I'll do some more of these little things, and then I'll get my computer out and I'll get ready, and then I'll do some push-ups, or I'll do something to like psych me up, and then I'm there and then I'm doing it. But it usually like, it's a process to like get going. And with all the working from home that we thought was going to be this wonderful thing,
it's a little bit challenging.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, because we didn't realize how important the drive, the routine of the drive to work and the getting the coffee, and then having colleagues that you're able to then say like, oh yeah, this is what I think. And they're like, yeah, it's a good idea. Just that validation that like, I'm a smart person. And then you're at home alone all day and your brain starts to eat itself. And it's really that the connection between
I had this conversation with my business coach recently. Is I said, well, because I have staff all over the country and in other countries, like literally in Europe, and they drive me nuts because they're always awake when I get on my 8 a.m. call with them, which I find obnoxious.
That they're awake?
Yeah, it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, right.
Like they're so happy. They've already had a whole day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've had no warm up here, you guys.
Right.
But that is really interesting I mean, do you think that that's been something that, I don't know, has brought it out more in people, that they're like working from home, they're starting to realize like, man, I have a really hard time focusing. I didn't have this issue back when I was at the office.
Yeah, no, I've had unfortunately, it's been a revenue stream for me, which is always like,
so everybody stay home, work from home, so Seth can make more money,
and then and give me a call.
And then give him a call.
Yeah, no, I think the disconnection that we experienced during the pandemic has just created havoc in so many different places, right? And I think people with ADHD are especially prone to that. And there's a tendency like where oftentimes we need alone time because the world is a lot. But there's a space when it goes from alone time to isolation, that if it goes beyond that, then people tend to hide and let things pile up and feel overwhelmed, and then not feel like they can dig their way out from it. And I think that's where the mental health component really comes in, because people can go to dark places, especially when there's not a lot of positive people around them, where they're getting, because what really works is positive feedback. Like anything that you tell me that I'm doing, like, I don't want to, I'm a fan of stoicism, right? Like I don't want to need anybody's praise, but man, it helps, right?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And the opposite is true too. As soon as there's critical feedback, then there's the shame spiral that people go through. And we tend to play the victim a lot because we're stuck in our own thought. Even my wife, so we've worked this out where when she sees me getting stuck feeling like I'm a victim, well, she'll say like, it sounds like you're being a victim. And then like, that's my cue to like go for a walk and like think things over, because we can slip into these, it's like, cause it's struggling to regulate those emotions.
Right.
And they can take us to, take us to dark places.
No, I'll give a shout out to our mutual friend, Roger Devers, who every single Friday morning at a community business networking event tells everybody, you're valued, you're cared for. I'm glad you're here. Huge advocate for suicide prevention work. And even more so, it matters even more now with the post-COVID people coming out of isolation, things like that. So shout out to Roger on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was talking to someone yesterday, and I said, "Yeah, I got this guy coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's an ADHD specialist, and the amount of people, when I mentioned you were speaking at Oregon Business Conference, and I mentioned that you and I had an interview prior to that, and then obviously you're here now.
Yeah.
Almost every time, people like their eyes kind of perk up, and they're like, tell me more. Right. And one of the things I've gotten regularly is they go, I'm pretty sure I have it, but I don't want to go on medication.
Right.
And that has been the overwhelmingly most common response. How do you respond to that? Why is there stigma around medication?
Right.
Is it being overprescribed? I mean, again, I know this is all situational, but how do you approach that conversation?
I mean, these come down to beliefs, right? So if I have a belief, like a political belief, then it doesn't matter what is actually transpiring because I have a belief, right? Yeah. So I'm going to find
confirmation bias.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the medication. The reason that doctors prescribe stimulant medication so freely is there are these double-blind studies that have been replicated time over time where they have a control group of kids or adults with ADHD. They don't get any medication. There's another group that gets no medication and therapy. And then there's another group that just gets medication. And there's no comparison as far as like seeing the results of that. So the efficacy of the stimulant medication is really hard to argue with. ADHD is complicated, and that's why like it's hard to sum the whole thing up succinctly, but regulating dopamine is a big part of it. And there's a whole bunch of other like neurological things that I don't think I'll try to get into without visuals, but
sure.
But it's so the stimulant medication, it's almost like there's a conductor in our head, and the system is supposed to be like things are supposed to go like this, like it's an anti-correlated system. So when this part of the brain is active, this other part of the brain is off. But when we don't have enough dopamine, then they happen at the same time. So it's like the notes are playing, like the orchestra is playing the right notes, but they're playing at the wrong time. So it's this like, it doesn't sound good inside the brain because there's not enough dopamine to kind of regulate things. So when there is the increased dopamine and other neurotransmitters, brain chemicals that are happening, it allows the thoughts to flow more accurately, and it helps me like finish my thoughts. If I don't take medication, I'm perfectly happy. I just don't do much. I can't. It's almost like I need. Tell this to my doctor. I need like little brain zaps to like
Well, I have a friend. I have a friend who is clinically diagnosed and takes medication, and I just had never talked to him a lot about it. And he was like, "Oh, I don't take it on the weekends." And I went, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, "What? Tell me about the way that feels, the difference too." And it's been really, I'd never heard that before. Yeah. I just, again, this is my own, like, just inexperience with it.
Well, it works like glasses, right? You have them on, they work. I can still see you without the glasses. It's just with the glasses, it's easier to see you. And
that's a good comparison.
Yeah. And it's really, it's how it is. And I think there's a lot of things that are built up around medication and what it means as far as weakness or dependence or not trusting like the deep state and if they're involved in this. And I'm pretty sure they're not, but the stimulant medication works for everybody, right? So even if you don't have ADHD and you take it, you're going to get some type of a lift, I think. So then with the way that society's going, no one's demands are going down, right? Mm-hmm. So the demand for attention and for focus goes up. Yeah. So there's always going to be people that are going to play the system or try to like work things to help them feel like they're going to get an edge or something.
Well, I think something that's interesting to specify is that you were talking about like substance abuse as coping mechanisms and things like that. There's so many coping mechanisms that aren't substance abuse, because it seems like substance abuse tends to be this stigma thing to where alcohol or hard drugs or something like that, but it's like social media or just I mean, just going and doom scrolling or, watching TV show marathons just to help balance the dopamine, things like that. There's so many different outputs.
Because all those things are in the now. Exactly. So when I watch the TV, I'm in the now, so I don't have to think, right? Or when I'm on social media, it's all about now. It's not something that I have to do later. So video games, all of these things. And video games are so different than they used to be. And like the amount of socialization that happens while they play, it's super important, like these connections that people
And none of
people
these
have
are
with it.
like inherently bad either. And I
No.
think that's something that I think people get lost on sometimes is we're like, oh, social media is a horrible thing because of X, Y, and Z. And I go, it just comes down to the question of moderation, intention, like why am I using it? What am I trying to avoid? Those kind of things.
Right. Right. No, I think that's true. But I guess I would ask them like what, and stimulant medication doesn't work for everybody with ADHD. The research says it's about 80% of people will feel it. The other people just don't feel anything. Oftentimes doctors don't really understand, like they really don't understand. There have not been too many doctors I've talked about ADHD with that really understand what's happening with executive functioning. So it's a guess, and everybody's brain is different. Oftentimes people will take stimulant medication for the first time with too high of a dose and be like, I can't take that stuff, and then never take it again.
Never try it again. Right. I've also heard of parents who were hesitant to give it to their children because they saw some of the personality change that had kind of defined the student or defined the kid, where it's like, I feel like I lost a portion of them, like whether it's energy or it's creativity, like something was a little bit
and I
like
don't
pushed down or something. So
the way it went for me is I was 23 when I started.
I was going to ask, like,
it.
What prompted it for you? Like
I was going to lose my job. I could not keep the paperwork together, and like I could be focused in the morning when the coffee was like fresh, but after lunch I couldn't keep it together, and I couldn't drink there. And so, because I was in a school,
that was right.
But otherwise, I would do that, right? I had all these different substances that like I would use in this way of like almost to help me think, right? Like, so it was all kind of planned out, and it helped me function. But that's also why there's all this research on how there's a 9 to 12 lifespan decrease for people with ADHD, especially those that aren't aware that they have ADHD, because of all of the coping mechanisms that then we'll use. Like people are like, I'm never going to take those pills, but I'm going to continue to smoke cigarettes because cigarettes are soothing and they provide dopamine, right? They're a stimulant. They help us, they activate us, they do other things. And the same is true with all kinds of other drugs and different ways of doing it. Exercise is also, like there's a famous study in Driven to Distraction. There's a professor who always had it together. He's a distance runner, but when he was in his 40s, he blew out his knee and he couldn't run for like 2 months and he completely fell apart. Like he couldn't keep track with anything. So he ended up getting on stimulant medication until the rehab and his knee was better and he started to run again. Then he didn't take it anymore. So like we have these coping mechanisms that can also be really healthy. Like exercise, especially cardio, is so good for us.
Man, I'd be curious. I wish we had like a live audience to ask questions right now, because I'm sure there's so many people that have questions. As you've been working with, a number of clients, and you've been speaking, I know you've been working on a number of different material. What's something that you're just really, really passionate about right now when it comes to this topic?
So it's I'm in the early stages of starting a nonprofit. It's called ADHD Adventure. And the idea is,
I love it.
So I've been going to like some different college campuses, and I can rent a table and I end up talking to kids. And so I'm standing there. So I juggle and I do other things, and I end up sort of doing on the spot coaching for kids, and they can't really purchase sessions because it's their parents that ultimately would do that. But I've just seen, like, when I've done it, there's a benefit to people, and there's so many people that are not diagnosed. So what I would really like to do with this foundation is to have college outreach to community colleges and on college campuses where just people are there being silly with signs saying like, ask me about ADHD, where people can come up and just ask, because that's what you're saying about other people. Yeah. People want to ask. So it's an invitation to say like, hey, come on over to this booth and ask questions. And it's fascinating, like what people ask. I just have to figure out a way to either get paid or to pay somebody else to do it, because there's a huge need. So that's what I'm really, really passionate about. So,
well, something that really stood out to me, and one of the reasons why we had you at Oregon Business Conference, was not just for people who think they have or know that they have ADHD. It was for employers, managers that are working with people with ADHD, because two things that are really unique right now. Number one is we have 4 generations in the workforce right now for the first time ever, from Gen Z all the way up to the boomers.
Interesting.
Like there are 4 generations. All of them communicate wildly differently from each other.
Yeah.
But there's also the component of the stigma around mental health,
Right.
around the topics of ADHD, around all this kind of stuff that has all been taken through the filter of different generational lenses.
Right.
So that was something that was really important to me, was like, if I'm someone, whether I do or don't have it, it's important for us to understand how to work with and how to support people with ADHD so that they can be as successful as possible,
Right.
and so that they can contribute positively to the work environment that you're a part of.
Yeah. And our culture is very independent, right?
Very independent.
So one person working in silo to get this thing done, as opposed to, more interdependent cultures. If we make when I had the opportunity to be in a leadership position, it was much more around like heavy on teams. So the more times you get people together to then do their work together, the chances are, because then the positive peer pressure comes in and they're working together. So then everyone is going to have it done because they are accountable to each other, as opposed to accountable to me. Then it's easier to get into like a power dynamic of,
Right.
no, I don't want to do that. Right. But if people have time to meet with each other and to ask questions in a safe space with like a small group of people, those questions get answered. And so that lantern light, like, it extends because other people are doing similar things. So I think so there are times I've worked in a couple situations where like a CEO from a company will have an employee that needs support, and they're like collaboratively like supporting. So like the employee will split the cost of coaching with the company.
Very cool.
And then it's really just kind of breaking down like what is happening and like how to slow things down and how to provide a little bit more scaffolding to make sure that things get done. And ideally it's setting up these connections within work. So then I don't need to be there, but it's common. Like, it's pretty common sense stuff as far as just people need to talk to each other and work with each other. And like anything, like if I have a strong flashlight, like my brain is a strong flashlight, I can see what I have to do and I can do it. I assume that everybody else has the same thing. They're just choosing not to use it. And that's not the case.
Right.
And whether it's not the case because of ADHD or because of how scattered everybody has become, it really doesn't matter. The same intervention would work, or just making things more collaborative. It takes time. Sometimes when we process verbally, it can get a little frustrating because someone then has to listen to it, right? But like if I don't get clarity through talking about it, I'm not going to get off on the right direction, and then we're all going to be in trouble, assuming that the work is important.
Is there any benefit to working with AI for someone that has ADHD to verbally process? You put it on, speak to text mode with Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever to help that kind of process your idea. And I know it takes out the human connection. I'm a huge fan of the human connection, the relational aspect, but I just am curious if that's something that you've read about, utilized, anything like that.
No, I use it all the time. Like I it's a really fun way of playing with ideas, of trying to like, meld like different like philosophies or other things together, like to kind of like play with ideas and to get feedback, because you do get feedback right from it. It is not a person, right? So as far as like accountability, Claude is not going to keep me accountable, but Claude can help me like understand my ideas, and Claude can help me figure out a way to like listen to me rant for a long time. I didn't realize,
without wearing out a human being that has to listen for that amount
I saw
of time.
Bernie Sanders in something talking to AI, and he like talked forever and it held it all. I was like, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
So like, as far as getting it out and clarifying, yes. As far as accountability, not so much. But no, I think it's great. And there could not be a better time to have ADHD because there's so many resources.
That's an interesting statement. Thinking it's like, it is probably a better time.
Oh,
it's interesting too. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and she was saying that she thinks that at some level, AI has removed some of the pain and hardship and things like that people need to go through to overcome, to do the hard work, to internalize things.
Yeah.
Right. Is that it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to sit down and focus on this problem, which would make it like I would internalize it. I would be better off because, like you mentioned earlier, like hardship is beneficial for us, but oftentimes we'll delegate it. to a robot and say, solve the problem for me. And it takes away some of the fun of being done with the half marathon training, being done with the workout, getting ready for this kind of thing, because you don't have to go through the hardship of having to figure that out.
I think
it's maybe a topic for another day,
Yeah.
but that's my concern, I think, is with ADHD and AI, is that someone's like, you know what, all the things that I need to work on, I don't need to work on them anymore. I'm just going to delegate it.
if you look at it through another lens of like accommodations, which we're always trying to do in schools, and it's so hard to do it. But as far as like, I can say all of my things and then it can help me like come up with an outline that I struggle to do on
Gotcha.
my own. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. I think there's so many other, I'm not too cued into AI and what's happening. So yeah, I think there's
always, it's a difference in motive, right?
Yeah.
Am I trying to avoid pain, or am I trying to do something efficiently that my brain is having a hard time doing?
Yeah, I think that's a big difference. And even thinking about your brain and ADHD stuff, like, I think that's really it. Like, are there things that you really can't, like, what would you say your presentation of ADHD type stuff is?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. Let me call my whole staff and ask them.
Well, what do they say? Because it's usually, oftentimes it's other people that.
Yeah. And part of this too is the more I've talked to entrepreneurs, especially, not just like CEOs or business leaders, but entrepreneurs, so many of them are like, nah, I got it. They're like, I got it. Because there is this difficulty to, like you said, I can plan long term, but I'm very much a now guy. Yeah. Very much a now guy, to where it's like my schedule will define so much of what I do that day. Yeah. I have a difficult time blocking time off. Yeah. Because for all the reasons you said, it's like, if I have 20 minutes to clean the house, I'll clean the house in 20 minutes. Yeah. If I have 2 days to clean the house, I'll clean the house in 2 days. Yeah. You know, but I think for me, it's the topic jumping. It's the inability to just like focus on a task until it's done. And that's something that, you know, you talk about the superpower type thing as well. I can hold a lot of ideas in my head at one time. Right. It's acting upon them in a singular way until it's to completion. Yeah. That's probably one of my most difficult ones.
Yeah. I think maybe it should be less about like who's on the team and not on the team, as far as like who's, you know, more fucked up, you know, like, like it going back to the spectrum thing, like just, but if you can understand like what would help you. So like when you have too many things going and you're not finishing, what helps you get through it? Because obviously you get things done.
Well, coincidentally, I have an AI personal assistant. Yeah. And I've had personal assistants, which is incredibly helpful. Yeah. But I have an AI one now that literally at the end of every day, I'll go, is there anything I missed? Ooh. And that is phenomenal.
Do you remember to ask that question?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And it's called Little Bird. And there's a lot of other versions of it. Claude has capabilities for it. Little Bird is incredibly helpful because it just, anything that comes across my screen, it has access to. And you can limit it. Yeah. Right. You can limit it. Hey, there's no, you know, don't pay attention to financial records. Right. And I'll be like, okay, cool. But that's incredibly helpful.
That could really,
because for me, again, there's also, whether I have ADHD or not, there's the fear of forgetting something. Yep. It's that fear of failure of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I dropped the ball on that one. Yeah. That isn't as present with the integration of having like an AI virtual assistant, which is incredibly helpful. So I'm trying, again, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate in our conversation too, where I think that AI can be used just as an absolute, like, it's, I mean, all the AI slop and all the things like that. But I'm just curious what we're going to see and how it's going to benefit people with ADHD and how it's going to harm people with ADHD. Is there going to be, you know, again, I'm going to an AI personal assistant, not to a human being, which there's obviously a pro and a con to either one. Right. That this one is incredibly objective. My AI assistant has no feelings. They have no whatever. They don't get burned out. They can listen to me probably process for hours, right? Versus the human connection, you know, and the affirmation and things like that you get from human beings. Yeah. So I'm curious to see kind of how it works with people. You left education before AI had hit its full
I left,
scope.
During the pandemic.
Right
we went to distance learning, and I'm so a relational person, and I was like, I can't do it.
That would have been hard for me, man.
It was so hard, and I couldn't, and that was the point where I knew I needed to make a change, but it took like leaving that job and going to a job as a project manager. Hilarious. Disaster. Right? Like so predictable, but I like knew that it was a terrible idea.
I want to try it.
It's like, let's jump on the boxcar anyway and see where are we going to go? And, but sometimes like, it's like that thing, like where we have to really mess up and then to realize like, oh, and that was sort of my undoing and unraveling. And as soon as I like struggled professionally, then it was like, who am I? Right. Because my identity was so caught up in this like work thing, like this is me, which is silliness. But then kind of falling in that way kind of provided the space I needed to work on myself and really figure it out. Cause it's all about self-awareness and knowing like what you need and then asking for it.
Gosh, and I hate to, I don't want to take the stigma with this, but it almost feels at some level like a 12-step program to where it's like step one is just acknowledging you have a problem.
Yes, it is.
And that's sort of like the moving on of like.
No, and I did quite a bit. I did 6 months of AA and then I found out my issue, I didn't quite fit. I was like, why don't I fit here? And then I went and I found this Codependence Anonymous and that was much more of like,
I have also, I mean, I've been through multiple counselors and codependency was something that really, I was so grateful that like about 10 years ago it became a big topic of conversation in mental health.
Right.
Unbelievably helpful, but also I can see where the parallels line up with some of the stuff because there is such fear of failure or not, not getting the approval or just so many different things that could be attached to it for sure.
Well, then we get into you being a former pastor and
we don't need to talk about that.
And the absence
unless we have a couple beers.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
No, but it's thinking about the spiritual component.
Yes.
Because if I'm too tied up in what Jake thinks of me, which is often the case, right? That then I get lost in that. But if I have a belief in something bigger, not like an organized religion thing,
something outside of yourself.
That's like bigger than me, that's bigger than you. That's where I find something that's centering.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about it because everyone's in different places because of all of the abuses and stuff. This
is our next podcast episode, Seth.
It's
no, I joke about that because I often tell people, they're like, you were a pastor? And I was like, yeah, it's a couple beer story. That's usually my go back to.
No.
But no, I mean, I think there's something to be said about that. And again, I mean, we can tie all this kind of back into where you're saying ADHD is trendy. Having written to-do lists, not just that long-term goal that your flashlight can't hit, but having those written to-do lists, understanding again the way that you portray, what was the word you had for it? The way that you not manifest ADHD, but the way that I can't remember how you said it exactly, how it presents itself in your life. The thing that really threw me for a loop was the first time that I had a friend who was like a very definitive introvert that said they had ADHD. And I was like, what?
Right.
Because growing up, it was always about ADD and hyperactivity.
Right.
And it wasn't until you started getting into these conversations about executive function and things like that to where I was like, oh, there's not like a copy and paste, like, oh, that's the hyperactive kid in class.
Right.
Because back in the 90s, that's what it was.
Well, and it's a different kind of hyperactive. Like I think the DSM-6 is going to come out, and I don't know if it's going to move away from all of these categories.
What's the DSM-6?
It's the big manual that the doctors and psychiatrists use to diagnose mental health disorders. Yeah. So like it's going to be redone soon, and then that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, I think it's less. I think what I was trying to say is it's not necessarily physical hyperactivity, but it's the mental hyperactivity, which is like the ability to pause.
Right.
And that's what happens with the behavior. The kid can't sit still. He can't pause. Right. And it's the same thing as just happening in our minds. So it looks like someone's totally calm because they figured out
racing thoughts and there's
when they're masking there's
Yep.
And then like how to stop it all. And that's where the breath work comes in. And that's where like these mindfulness, spiritual kind of practices can be really grounding and saying like, this is actually reality as opposed to the nonsense that we have in our heads. Mm-hmm. I haven't figured out how to link them together, but like, I'm interested in the long term. Like,
no kidding.
How to really calm ourselves. Right. And so a lot of it's these self-calming strategies that, like if I'm feeling anxious and I ground into my breath, then that's a way that I can like actually get back into the place I want to be. It's
Well,
taken me a
I remember
long
you
time to
talking.
get
You're
there.
talking with Cindy Brown Mills, who was
Yeah.
one of our speakers at Oregon Business Conference. She's a breathwork specialist in Alaska, and I remember you just being really just struck by that was a focal point for what we wanted to have at the conference, but also just the
Yeah.
ability as business owners or as entrepreneurs or employees to just take a moment
Oh yeah,
in the
she's so
heat
good.
in the heat of
Yeah.
of anxious
Everything.
times and whatever else. What's some of
Her and I are we're going to do an ADHD adventure retreat in Alaska.
I had no idea you guys were
summer
working on
2027.
this.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
It's so exciting.
That was if there was just a huge win for me and a
Yeah.
takeaway from Oregon Business Conference is the amount of people
Yeah.
that are doing work together that I had no idea about.
And that's the biggest plug for the Oregon Business Conference is I made like 3 really good contacts.
Oh, that's so
there
cool.
that I would never have made otherwise. So
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I want to end with this. We could, gosh, man, I feel like we could just go on forever, and I would love to have like somebody else interview you and ask questions just to get what they have to say. But I want to end with this question: what is it about your work that gives you joy? When is there a moment that you are just like, this is why I do what I do?
Well, there's the moment when someone, like there's a 14-year-old kid that stands out in my mind, and there's a whole bunch of other people. But when I explain things and they're like, they're silent and they're almost overjoyed to say, wait, that's what it is? Like, that's what all of this has been? That's why I struggle with this and this and this? And they talk about that point like is half of the intervention, right? It's just understanding that that's what my mind does. That's why I do this. I'm not uniquely fucked up, right? I'm not broken. I fall into this, like, I have this different wiring. It's my neurology. Millions of other people have the same thing going on because so many people carry this, like, I'm uniquely broken, and they're not honest with other people because they really can't be. No one really wants you to say, you have to say it again. Right. So it's a lot of this internalized stuff. So when people have that aha moment during the coaching, that's like, that's good.
Some freedom for them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited about your book, Not Uniquely Fucked Up.
Yeah.
Which is a great title for a book. Seth, I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah,
that you took
I appreciate the opportunity.
especially to drive up from Eugene to be here, man. It's awesome.
Drive through fish and chips.
Shout out the fish and chips here in good old Levittown. So, but no, man, I can't thank you enough, and excited about the work that you're doing and the work you're gonna be doing.
Yeah, thanks.
Because I know that you're always trying to find a better way or a different way of explaining things that have been explained, but it's just such an important thing. And again, I joke on it being really trendy. It has been trendy, but it's also so needed. Yeah. It's so necessary for us to be successful, not just in business, but just as humans. Like,
it's all interconnected, right?
It's all interconnected. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.